Sometimes I say, I'm going to talk about the darkness. And people go like, no, 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 I don't want to hear about the darkness. I don't want
Hmm.
that word on its own just scares me, right? When we talk about darkness and light, we're not talking about like two separate things. I like teaching it like it's a pendulum, right? We can be closer to the light or further away from the light, right? But we are still light. So the darkness is not like a separate part of us. It's part of our natural universe. This moment I could focus myself on denying the pain of the world, or I could choose to like embrace it and integrate it as, yeah, I feel it. It's there. I cannot avoid it. I'm not like repressing it. And then I'm able to share, inspiring with hope and positivity that what I do supports, and in this lightness of the word world, instead of like dwelling into the pain, and then going there and diving deep into that spot. Duality to oneness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Empowered Self podcast. So, it is an absolute pleasure and an absolute privilege for me to get to be here with Analu. Analu Lucia has been a yoga teacher of mine. I basically got the good fortune to go down to Costa Rica and do a 300-hour yoga teacher training with her this past November, and it was absolutely incredible. I learned so much, and it really was a life changing experience. And Analu's basically been teaching yoga for many, many different years. She runs retreats. She basically also does Akashic record reading. So she just has so much wisdom to offer. And so it's a real, I'm really excited to get to shine some of her light on the world and get to share some of her light with this audience today. So, Anna Lou, welcome to the Empowered Self podcast. It's really amazing
Thank
to have you
you.
here. And I'd just like to invite you now to maybe introduce yourself a little bit. Who are you and what brings you here? And yeah, what could you say about yourself to our audience?
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure. The pleasure is mine. I'm very grateful to be here. And hi, everybody. Yeah, super excited to be able to share today a little bit of my story and maybe my love for yoga, my passions, what I do in service, and yeah, a little bit about myself. Well, I'm from Costa Rica, and I'm very happy that you enjoyed the training, by the way. Yeah, I've been teaching since 2009. Yeah, so it's been like 17 years. I've been teaching yoga and meditation, different things. I created my own brand and been doing retreats and started with the teacher trainings the last 8 years that I've been doing the programs. And I'm also a musician, so music is a very important part of my life. So yeah, I've been sharing music since I was little. I come from a family of musicians, so yeah, I've been also the last year doing a bit of sound healing therapy and kind of like time that I've always been doing. So introducing that's a huge part of myself that I share. What else can I say? I'm passionate about spirituality since I was little. I think a gift that was also given to me through my family. So very grateful for that. And yes, like the spiritual path has always been in my life. So I'm a forever student of it. I've been through different, I would say, routes and lineages in my life, like seeking for my own, connection to the divine and, religions, philosophies, diverse, from Buddhism to Hinduism to all these different things I've done. So I think in my quest for truth and for knowing who I was, it's been an adventure. Definitely am an adventure. And from that space, that I have, that I think I started seeking for my own, discovery. I decided to share, I think is an important thing that I do. I learn something and I share it with others. I believe in like when you receive this or when you find some like solution or, passion that you really benefit you, I think I thought there's some responsibility as well to be able to share it with others because maybe it could be of service to somebody else. So I would say what I do all kind of like sums up to like service, in a way, service to help others, feel more calm or more fulfilled or, share a little bit of what has helped me in my personal life, through the different practices and techniques I learned. So yeah, and I move around. So I'm from Costa Rica, but I'm not always there. But a part of what I do is expand those teachings and I love traveling. So yeah, I share them wherever I go. So yeah, I guess that's a little summary of me and what I do. The Akashic readings as well has been a part of my life. The last years, but I think the last couple of years I've been kind of like sharing them more openly. I think it was the thing I did kind of like undercover for a while, kind of like not feeling so comfortable of exposing it, I would say, but then I feel like the last years I've been like, okay, this is something I do. I had to also offer it, so yeah, we
Mhm.
can talk more about that later. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring up the Akashic records because that's actually was our first introduction, right? I was
Yeah.
researching different yoga schools that I wanted to go to. And what really stood out for me was the fact that you were so multi-dimensional. Like you had various experience from many different traditions, which I really liked. And also the
Yeah.
Bhakti aspect and the Kirtan aspect. And then,
Yeah.
the Akashic records reading is a great opportunity to really get to know somebody and to feel into them. And another thing that you said just now with your experience was that what you really try to do with your life is to always be a student. And I think that's such an amazing mentality to come from because, like, everybody has something that they can offer us that we don't know. That's part of their unique life path and their unique gift. And so, one of the first things that you taught us actually was going through our journal today from our course. And one of the first things you said was like about emptying your cup, right? And so,
Mhm.
allowing yourself to receive new information. And I just wanted you to maybe talk about that a little bit. What emptying your cup is to you, how to potentially do it, and why it's so important on this path of transformation and growth to come at it from an open and empty place.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Yeah, I always begin the courses and retreats sometimes with that invitation. I feel like we all have, like our perception of truth and beliefs, and then through life, we all explore different modalities. So whatever it is in our work, in our belief system, in our religion system, like politics, all of it, right? And then we tend to sometimes agree to ideas or belief systems like as they are the truth, the unquestionable truth, right? And it happened to me many times, on my personal life that I was like, for a moment, for example, I studied a lot Buddhism and I was like, okay, this is the ultimate truth, right? So I went like full on to like Buddhist teachings and this one and the other one. And I feel like I found myself in a moment where I was getting a little bit like this is the only way, maybe, or and then I had to like empty myself out so that I could see things from a different angle. I feel like when we are stuck with ideas or beliefs as they are, which happens a lot to everybody, then there's no space for us to like learn something new or even see the same thing from a different angle. So when I start the teacher training and I say that, I usually say it also because it's my experience, like that one that you participated, for example, that is for yoga teachers, right? So I have 15 yoga teachers coming from all these different backgrounds that they have learned with all these different teachers and countries and all from their cultures and places and ways of communicating and all. And then, they all have a very unique perspective and experience of the same thing, right? So let's say you're doing a pose or you have a view on the yogic philosophy. So if we tend to like attach or, close our minds to that, the view that we come from or the view that we're stuck with, then there's no space for learning. So then we cannot become a student. I think the beauty of like having this beginner's mind and student's mind, like is to like always be open to like listening and seeing things from a different perspective, from the other person's perspective, even if it's just a simple communication, right? The moment we close ourselves down, then we're incapable of having empathy, of having compassion, of like, understanding things. And then when we empty ourselves, it's like empty your cup, like you know nothing, right? It's also an invitation to be in the present moment, right? Not carry, let's say, the baggage from the past. So be like, okay, I'm right here in this moment. I'm gonna empty myself so that I can open my heart, to listen deeply, to learn and see this from a different perspective, right? It's opening to the views, to the universe, to allow to share something to you that you need to or that you want to experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so fulfilling when you do that, because like one perspective might serve you in one portion of your life. But Carl Jung is a really amazing teacher, which I've learned from, and I know you do a lot of shadow work and stuff like that. So you've studied and learned from him as well. But he talks about how like basically the first half of your life is about sort of developing and growing, but then it's like the sun rising, where the sun rises to its highest point, and then it starts to descend. And so what he says is like what was true in the morning will in the evening have become a lie. Right. And so
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
if you live according to the principles of the morning in the evening and you stick to dogmatic beliefs that served you once, even though you're in a completely different place, it's actually doing a disservice to you in your life because it's not meeting the needs of the moment. Right. So I think that is such incredibly profound wisdom. But as the viewers can tell already, you're a very deep thinker, and you can tell you've really dealt with a lot of these ideologies and these beliefs for a long time. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, not everybody has this desire to search for more meaning and to understand the universe more deeply. But was there like a moment on your journey that sort of set you down this path, or like maybe an initial awakening that sort of, made you question reality and seek for answers?
Um, yeah, I think there were several moments, John, and I think maybe we all have, you different moments. And maybe before I even speak about my own experience, I do believe that each individual, we're so unique, and that's our beauty, right? And what's my experience doesn't necessarily, it has to be yours, like, maybe there's people who have this awakening moment because they went through something very challenging and that led them to start, getting closer to questioning or self-inquiry. Some others, I don't know, there's a moment of some event, or a practice that leads them through. So it's so unique to each individual because we all have, I believe, our own rhythm, our own soul's purpose, our own soul's journey, right? So it's also an invitation kind of like for people to connect with their own way, at their own way. Like it's okay if they haven't had this, let's say, moment yet, or it's good not to compare, with each other because some people will probably spend their whole lives without having this, or some people had it when they were six, or that doesn't make you or I or the other person less than the other, right? But that said, I think I somehow was always I guess there were two things. One was that this seed of like spirituality, I guess, was somehow planted in me since little from my family. And even though I did not understand it at all, like it was there happening around me, but I was like, I'm doing my own thing. Sometimes, you are planted a seed by somebody, but then that seed doesn't sprout till like 10 or 15 years later, right? So I believe that seed was given to me from from my nest, let's say, but I sprouted at the moment I had to sprout. Like sometimes I believe like I had my grandmother who was a very wise woman telling me all these things, and then it was maybe sometimes like, oh, 10 years later, oh my God, that was my grandmother, you know? So there's like this our own rhythm that plays a part of it. And also, so that's one side of it. I guess the other part of me was like I think I did had like this feeling of, I would say, as a young woman, maybe a bit rebellious, like questioning, rebellious, in a way. Like I was not a rebel. I was kind of like a very good girl, but in a way of why? Why does this have to be written like this? But why? Why does the cloud do that? But why? Like I did have this kind of like curiosity of like, and of what else is there? Like and then I had a very deep kind of like connection to thirst, I would say, to connect with some spiritual lineage. I was not kind of like raised anything specific, like religion wise. My mom would talk to me about God and angels sometimes, but I didn't have like I would go to church, or I didn't declare myself as a anything. And I think because I would see that people had this kind of like religion, I'm Catholic, I'm Methodist, I'm this, I'm that. That brought me to find my own sense of connection with the divine, you know. I think it came from that place. And of course, life katamps that one lives, moments where, I had difficulties and then made me question, what am I doing? And then I think the inquiry began a lot with myself, like questioning, like, who am I? What am I doing here? Who's God? Like all these questions that I had nobody would answer me because I guess, you know, there's like this desire that can come from all these places to kind of like understand yourself better, or it could come from a desire to heal, or it could come from a desire to know, it could be like from the mind. I want to understand this. And regardless where it comes from, I think this is a very pivotal moment for people, when they have this feeling of like, we all have feelings of suffering or something that there's like an emptiness inside of me that I need to feel, right? And then, of course, what we do is we tend to look for it outside, which I did. I went through journeys of exploring through all these religions and culture and practices and this and that because I was seeking who had the answer for my for all these questions that I had. And one of my deepest questions was also about God. Who's God? Does the Buddhists have the answer? The Hindu have the answer? The Catholics have the answer? Is everybody lying? Like, are the aliens the answer? Like, please, please find somebody who can tell me. And then I did my own whole journey around it, and it was really interesting because it was years and years of exploring all the different philosophies, and then I came back to the same point, to the same moment of like, after exploring all this that enriched my life in so many ways, I came back to myself. And then I had to sit with myself and realize that the answer was here. It was not in something that was outside, right? I guess for everybody it's really different. And it's not something also that can be pushed into somebody, or I think it comes, like I said, for some people, it comes and it manifests in different shapes and forms, because for somebody, it could be a realization that they get by connecting with nature. Like I have a very good friend who is not a yogi, who's not into anything that you would frame into any category. But the man is so connected. He lives by the forest in Costa Rica. He takes his walk. He's so connected to nature and the universe. So he has his own spirituality in his way, right? And that's his way to connect to find purpose and meaning to his own life. And for some other one would be yoga, would be tai chi, or would be running, or would be a religion, right? Practice. So it's so unique to each individual, right? So yeah.
Hmm. And it's super interesting because there's so many different paths that all lead to the same answer of coming back to your heart, and yet it's totally different for every single person in unique variations and in unique ways. But what I wanted to ask you now was like one of your biggest teachings is about sort of light and darkness, right? The
Mhm.
balance between both. And for me, like this journey of self-discovery that so many yogis are on is a natural sort of progression of the soul because we do sometimes experience a lot of suffering, and I think deep in our hearts we know that this doesn't necessarily have to be the case. There can be a more beautiful world out there that we can sort of work towards, but in order to get there, it's also necessary to have the dark components to learn the value of the light and stuff like that, right? So you really,
Yeah.
it's so incredibly important to have the duality between lightness and dark. But it's hard, it's hard to live with both and to be a part of this world and see the suffering and yet still be joyous at the same time. And so,
Yeah.
how have you found balancing the light and the dark, and what is the importance of embracing the darkness in our lives to find more truth and to find more of that light that our soul knows is possible and knows can be here?
Yeah, it's such a deep question. Yes, it is. Because it's deep and it's very for me it's like one of the most important teachings. I feel like maybe first I'll explain a tiny bit maybe for the audience if they're not like familiar with this like concept of duality or the light and the dark. Which is funny because sometimes I say I'm going to talk about the darkness, and people go like, no, 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 I don't want to hear about the darkness. I don't want
Mhm.
that word on its own just scares me, right? So when we talk about darkness and light, is we're not talking about like two separate things. Like that's the first thing I wanna like say. Like I like teaching it or explaining it to like it's a pendulum, right? So everything is one, comes from one, right? The oneness, unity. And within that unity, let's say there's like in our nature, which is a representation of that, right? The night and the day, or the yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine, right? It's in our nature. Is not separate one to the other, right? So in a pendulum, we can be closer to the light or further away from the light, right? But we are still light, right? There's still that oneness. So the darkness is not like a separate part of us. It's part of our natural universe, like, in psychology, they would call it the shadow, or, the shadow name. It's like we all have this within us, and it is within nature, which is a nice way to see it, and this is the same way, like we could, see it in our own emotions. Sometimes we may say like, oh, I like to be happy and excited, but I don't like being sad or angry, because that's dark, but it's a part of us. So from this duality, let's say these two faces, that we have in everything, coming into that acknowledgement, or that recognition, integration of this side of us, or this side of the world, the universe that exists within us, because we are as the micro, so the macro, right? We are a little particle of that. Befriending it, it's the work of being with those moments. Being with the dark side would be for me dealing with my pain, seeing my pain, befriending my pain, befriending my suffering. For me, there's no such thing possible as living a complete, life in, like, I could be towards the light. I could serve my life in a way that's positive, but there's still going to be that inside of me. It's like I cannot repress it or avoid it. It lives inside of me. So I don't know. I'm not a therapist, so I cannot like really explain of how Jung said it, or a psychologist would explain it. But the way um I like teaching it is just of like befriending this part of us that exists, you know, and then, like many philosophers and teachers say, is when we have the courage inside of us to see that inside of us, to go to that cave, that dark spot inside of us, to see our pain, to our emotions that we don't like about ourselves, or even to see or embrace or integrate what we don't like about the world or of other people. It's like the moment we recognize it and integrate it, then it's almost like we embrace it as a part of us that lives there, right? And then from that integration, from that union, then we make our choices, let's say, to live our life in a way that brings the light inside of us, right? That reinforces that light inside of us. But having in mind that if that darkness shows in me, in any way that we could call it, like I have a moment where I'm off, right? I'm completely off, and something happened and I got triggered and I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I get judgmental, like, that it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay that I have that feeling. I'm not going to be a bad person because I do, or because I act in that way, right? Um, so I feel it's like also part of the soul's journey to be able to have that choice, to have that choice to see their own darkness, to embrace as mine, yours, and the world's, right? It's not separate, right? For example, this moment, you would say, like, this moment, I could focus myself on denying the pain of the world, or I could choose to like embrace it and integrate it as, yeah, I feel it. It's there. I cannot avoid it, you know. But then what do? I embrace it, I recognize it, it's there, it's painful for me. I invite it, and I hold it, you know. I'm not like repressing it. And then I'm able to share, inspiring with hope and positivity that what I do supports, and in this lightness of the world, instead of like dwelling into the pain, and then going there and diving deep into that spot, right? So there's this kind of like thing in yoga that we learn as well. It's the same, like the yin and the yang, it's like two parts of the same practice, just with different qualities, right? With different, one cannot exist without the other, right? Um, So this is part of the important teachings also in Advaita Vedanta and in other philosophies, right? To come from this duality to oneness, right? The feminine and masculine within me. For women, for example, it would be, the vulnerability of the feminine and the caring and the love of the mother and embracing, and then the strength of the man, and the action and it's also in the mind, it's also in our brain. So it's all over. It's like all over ourselves. The body is so smart, our system is so smart that when we realize it's in everything, it's in every single system of the universe. This creation and destruction, right? This like a forest. I think I give this example a lot in my classes. Like this destructing force. You could say like a forest sometimes to survive has to it creates a fire on its own. Like it's a self-preservation system, creates its fire to be born again. So you could call it, oh, this is a destruction sad moment, but maybe not. Maybe it is with the intention that it can reborn again. So sometimes embracing this darkness allows us to tap deep into that which we don't want to see or go to then be reborn again. But that's the beauty of it, right?
Mm. Wow. Very deep. Yeah, there's so much,
And
so many amazing things there. But I think for me, like initially, the reason why so many of us repress darkness is because we don't see that it has any value. But I think the reason why darkness came in the first place is because there was one, and then it split into two. So darkness is really more oneness and then other, right? So it's what allows for expression to take place, and it's what allows for
yeah,
uniqueness to take place. And then it's the split
yeah,
of that, and then it's the split of that, and it's this constant split, right? But at least for me, like I don't really like to look at it as like lightness or darkness, but I think the way you described it was beautiful with the pendulum, where it's like closer to the light or farther away from the light. And I would consider it like love, right? It's like it's parts of ourselves that we either love or parts that we don't love. And I think to me, it's like understanding that there's sort of a spirit that lives in everything, right? Like there's an essence of God that lives in everything. And so every piece of the universe to some degree or another is made of love, but we choose to not love that piece of ourselves. And like picture, I just got a new puppy, so I'm going to use this puppy story. But
yeah,
like if you have two puppies and you raise one with love or you raise one with sort of hatred or shame, or you're denying them, then that puppy is going to start having bad actions, right? It's going to start acting out and it's going to be more disagreeable and stuff like that. So the reason why our shadows are maybe angry or upset is because there's some part of ourselves that we haven't been loving, that we haven't been feeding good energy to, and because it deserves love and it's not getting it, now it's going to start to lash out, and its boundaries aren't being made, so there's going to be some sort of consequence. And so this to me is inevitably what darkness is it's not necessarily punishment like so many people think it
mm,
is, but it's more
yeah,
consequence, right? It's like we with our free will have chose a specific path, and now we're dealing with the consequences of past decisions so that we learn from our actions, right? We actually learn about the what we do matters and the results from it, right? So I think shifting that
yeah,
perspective can be really useful, and see that like we are just dealing with the consequences of our own past karma. But what I think is so beautiful is a lot of people get to this point where they see that this is taking place, and then the outcome becomes service, right? It's service to others because we know that our actions are going to have consequences. So, how can we start planting more good seeds in the moment that are going to lead to more good things? Right. And so,
yeah,
yeah, I just want to ask you now, because I think you've planted so many beautiful seeds. You've literally taught thousands of people yoga. It seems to me like you love yoga and you're really passionate about it. So is there anything that comes to mind when I ask you about yoga that's maybe like a hidden gem or some like really valuable piece that you feel like sharing with people today?
so many things.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a
uh,
lot.
I would say, yeah, in my personal path, I think it's been so many different moments and colors, that I've explored yoga from, the bhakti component, the philosophy, the exercise or the asana part that I did, the meditation. I guess for me, yoga has been like a tool to connect back to self, for for a connection back to my own awareness, right? Through the diverse things, it has brought me back to self. It has helped me realize, you know, to see my own disconnection with, my own separateness, right? Because that's what yoga is, union, right? So through the diverse practices, I think it allows us to really come back to self, to really realize our own essence as oneness, like I'm gonna tell you like a real story, like a real story, like I'm saying, like I'm being super honest. Like sometimes say I was having like a very bad day, and I remember having my mind clustered with this decision that I had to make, and I was all over through the place. I could not, with years of practice in meditation, no, nada. I would just go and sit. And my mind was just so clustered with this emotions and thoughts. And then I went to practice. I was like, I'm going to practice, go to the class. And then through the class, I could just see my mind. Mind's drama, because, of course, you're there, you're doing your asana, you're doing your movement. And then it really made me see clearly the drama of my head, right? At that precise moment where I was like, wow, look at my storyline. Like, what is Analu doing, And then it's like those moments of clarity. So then you go back to the breath. And you could go back into the breath, back into the present moment. And there's a moment of realization, of self-realization, where you're like, what? Like you can see yourself clearly through this practice. It takes you back to self. It's like, for me, it's been such a grounding practice to connect back to my heart. Regardless of how you share it, regardless if it's a yin yoga, hatha yoga, a meditation tool, a mindfulness tool, a philosophy, because I believe, like in my own path, I've had the different ones. Like I said, I teach different ones, I've received the different ones, and everything has like brought me back to a deeper connection to knowing myself better and to my true essence, which is that the consciousness, right? So that oneness. So it has helped me as a recognition of myself, of my true nature, right? And I'm not specifically saying it's the only path, because there's so many, like I said, but it's definitely one that it's regardless of where you're at in your life, um, it keeps bringing you back to yourself. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you've been doing yoga, right, for 20 years. That doesn't say that life is not going to be challenging at some points, and then you're still human. And then you have this tool that is like, okay, how can I go back to myself and not be caught up in this drama of the world that I'm feeling or sensing or perceiving or feeling? And then boom, you come back to yourself. You come back to realizing your true nature, right? So that's for me the gift. It just helps us recognize our true nature beyond our emotions, our body, our mind, right? So it's like it draws me back to me all the time, you know?
Yeah, and I guess that's initially what it was created for, right? And that is the sort of I would say it's like a spiritual science of yoga means to yoke, right? Which means to bring into union.
To union.
And it's to dispel the illusion of separation. Because I think what we're human beings who have developed this capacity to be self-aware, and it's sort of like a double-edged sword because it's beautiful that we've got this gift, but also too, it is the cause of our suffering in a lot of ways, right? Because it's like when the fish feels like it's not a part of the water that it's swimming in, then it starts to panic and freak out and all these different things, right? But when it
Yeah.
realizes like it's easier to go with the flow of the water than it is to try and swim against the current, then life becomes a lot easier, right? So yeah, it definitely seems like this is an eternal truth that exists. We are one with everything, and we almost separate ourselves from that for the sake of becoming more connected to oneness once we eventually realize it once again, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's the whole
it's
game
so
of it.
funny.
That's the whole
Yeah.
game. Like for me, that's the game. The game of life is just to, so I believe exactly what you said. Like we separate ourselves. We have an experience of separateness from everything, right? We individualize ourselves, right? That's what the also the ego provides us self-identity, right? So we have this experience of separateness. Ultimately, it's like a game to live from this separateness, to then return back to the oneness. And then through this game is that we evolve, that we grow, that we expand, in this union, in this love, because ultimately it's all love, for me,
Mm.
right? And not in a wishy-washy way. No, it is love because it's like we're all coming from this oneness, this loving energy, right? So it's through this practice as well that we are of love, that we're able to embrace, integrate, recognize our own nature, which is not of separateness, like you said, take the veil out so that we can see clearly our true essence of oneness, and then hopefully return to that, right?
Mm.
Live a life from that space of love and oneness.
And to
Yeah.
me, it seems like what makes it so cool is that, like, if you're just in a state of love, right, but you're not actually sort of aware of it, then that's amazing. But if you step away from it and then you actually choose to love somebody, that's a different scenario, right? So it's like active participation in love is what makes love so special. Because you can try and force somebody to love you, but that's not going to really be the real thing. It has to come from a desire to want to be of service or to want to be of one with everything, because that's a whole different level of connection, right? As opposed to just like
Yeah.
unconsciously being connected, but to actually choose to say, like, I chose to separate and now I'm choosing to come back to you because I want to, not because I have to, right?
Yeah, and it's of course a challenge because we also have to learn or accept how to love those parts of ourselves that we don't like we were talking about the darkness, or even love in each other, in partners, in relationships, the parts of the other that we don't like, or that we don't like, that we see that, reflects. But ultimately, we're all mirroring each other, right? So whatever I don't like about somebody, or is a lesson for me to love that part and embrace it as my own as well, right? So I think that's also part of the game, and shows up, of course, a lot in relationships, when we, get triggered by each other's, pains, and we're all like our individual universes, you know, meeting each other, and we all have our background and our truths and our pain, and then we see each other, and there's like, this mirror of beautifully, beautifully showing us what is it that we need to grow. Where's that part of me that still has to put a little bit more love into, right? What's that part of me that I don't love that I'm seeing in this person, right?
Mm.
So it's another way you see it. And yeah, of course, it's challenging. But like you said, I think it's a bunch of things. It is, of course, a karmic, like you said, the karma part of it, I guess. Yeah, of course, of planting the fruits of, receiving the fruits of our actions. But I feel also there's like a deeper layer there. I believe in like accountability, and accountability in a way that I'm not the victim of my life. Like the events that happened to me, I'm responsible for, like, in a way, I chose them either before coming here, if I choose to believe in past lives, they gave me the script of the movie and I said, yeah, I'm gonna go through all those things, give them to me. Yeah, a bit harder is good. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll take it. And then I showed up. And then for some reason, this event, so coming back to, something is said before, sometimes it's like not playing the victim of it, but instead of asking why this happened to me, how can I learn from it? What is it that I'm not seeing here? Why is this experience showing up for me? So instead of the victim, but why I'm suffering right now. What can I learn from this experience? How can I see it from a different angle? What am I missing in my growth that this is showing me, right? So it's a way to see experiences from a different angle with the opportunity of growth and the opportunity of expanding. I like that. And of course, it's not easy, right? Because it's like, if you're seeing things up front, um, but like I said, diving into that pain, diving into that cave, into your own stuff, it's or the stuff that the other one is teaching you. It's readable. You can see it from a place and an angle that's beautiful if you want to, right?
Mm. Yeah. For sure. And, ultimately, we all get to choose the perspective to which we see things. Like, you can see anything and choose to see the darkness, or you can choose to see the light in it. And if oftentimes it's our victim mentality that is what causes us to choose to see the darkness as opposed to appreciating the light, saying that, like, we're condemned to be here rather than, like, I'm choosing to still be here every single day. But I want to ask you now because, I think something that a lot of people are dealing with on this journey of
Mm-hmm.
self discovery as we try and step more into our own power is something called imposter syndrome, right? And it's basically like this. not necessarily believing in yourself and who you are and what your capabilities are. So, do you have any advice for people who are maybe dealing with imposter syndrome and how they could maybe navigate that and overcome it to become more of their empowered self that's ready to share their gifts with the world in a way that they came here for?
Yeah, totally. It's a thing that I love. And I think I've lived it myself and we're talking about it. There's always doubt and insecurities that may come in a path. I feel like first of all, we all have things to share, right? We all have these experiences to share. Yeah, the imposter syndrome, I feel is like this feeling of I think I said it to you before, like who am I to be doing this, right? Who do I think I am, right? So I think it's an inner fight to the ego, right? As well. I feel like this is happening a lot, with the time that we are in, with the social media and the exposure, that there's this like the questioning of what's real, what's not real, right? So the authentic versus not authentic. So we have this a lot, like, when we see a video, like sometimes I don't know, I'm checking something online and I'm like, oh, the polar bear was rescued from the boat, and then my partner's like, no, Analu, that's AI. It's just like
Yeah.
you don't even know what's real or what's not. Like I could totally portray myself to be this guru if I want to dress in white, and act in a way, and then people could believe it. So there's the spiritual bypassing of that. That's kind of like another theme, but I feel like often it comes to authenticity, to like really speaking and sharing from the place of heart. Like I had this doubt myself, when I was like, I want to do these videos and I want to, like, I've had a podcast and like, who am I to do this? It's like I think of maybe a fear of what I don't like that I see in others, because again, what I'm feeling or what I see in others is a part that reflects myself, something I'm afraid of myself, right? So I would say to encourage people, uh, it's the path of the heart. Like when you are, and I teach this a lot in my training. So I tell people, where can you teach from? There's only one place that you can teach from. It is from your heart. You cannot teach. I could be a very wise person and study all the books and do all the rational thinking and the knowing of the head. But if it doesn't come from a place of heart, it's not going to come authentic. Or I could, study all the yoga teachers that I want to be like, and then copy all their classes and whatever clothing and whatever I want, but it's not going to come because it's not me. So I think part of our goal in life is to discover our own uniqueness, our own gift. Like, what is it that you bring as John to this life? What is it that Analu brings with her own way of being, right? So it's tapping in that authentic way that I speak, that I do things, that I like sharing things, and then sharing from that space. Like, how can it go wrong if it's from a place of heart, right? But it definitely, you can feel it and sense it if it's not from a place of heart, right? So then it becomes like, another way to see this experiences that happen to us that are like opportunities of growth is like, I always say, I can only teach from my own experience. And for some beautiful life gift that I've had, sometimes hard things that I've lived in my life, I like seeing them, like as I grow older, I could look back and I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful that this terrible tragedy happened to me, because it happened to me. Now I can teach how I got out of it. Oh, because of this other thing that happened to me and I lived it. Oh my God, now I know how, now I'm in a place that has transcended that so that I can share it. Right. So it can only come from a place of experiential living, right? So that's where we share from. I feel like, finding your unique gift or your passions, the things that you feel like you're drawn to, that excite you, that come from, it's like the difference between something that comes from a place of heart or not, I guess, would be something that when you share about, like, I think you told me this in the training one day. I was talking about, I think, an energy class. Remember, it was like something about the chakras or the values or something about the energetic part that I was like so passionate about talking and talking. And then you came after class and told me, wow, and I can really tell that this is something you love speaking about because kind of like your eyes were like sparkling and you were like so passionate. And of course, because it's something that I love, that I love discovering, that I love practicing, that I believe in, that comes naturally to me versus like if I would teach anatomy, I'm like, yeah, the thigh bone and the kneecap, and that's all I can say because I don't really relate to that.
Yeah,
Right? It's like
totally.
I would say, right? Do you resonate with this? It's like connecting with something that you're passionate about, that you've experienced, that comes natural and authentically for you. That then you're like, yeah, I've lived that. So now that I've lived through this, I feel like I can share my experience, not from a place of I'm commanding you the ultimate truth, but no, from a place of like, hey, this is what happened to me, and maybe you find some insight in this experience. And if not, great, right? But I think that's where the we can how we can work through this imposter syndrome, tapping deep into that heart space and not paying so much attention to our inner critic, right? That little voice there that's like the it keeps us, throws us down and questioning, like ourselves. I guess that's it. I'm still struggling with it in the way of like I told you before. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared of doing this videos on the phone. Should I do them? Should I not? Maybe I just hide and do my podcast in audio. So it's like
Mhm.
I still get it sometimes, and I'm like, no, I should do it. I have to do it. So it expresses differently in different ways for each person. But I think just dismantling the mask of who we think we have to be to fit in to a society or a norm or a belief system is beautiful. Like, like I don't have to dress up in a certain way or speak in a certain way. Like I just have to be me. And it's in being myself that the beauty comes through. In being who I am with my whatever I have, all my packages. So things that I come with. That's the beauty because when it shows like that, then you can really tell, wow, that person's authentic and is speaking from a place of heart. And that I think we can see, right? We can sense it as beings when a person's coming from a place of heart or speaking from somewhere else, right?
Mm.
I hope that
Wow.
helps your question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that was so beautifully and eloquently answered.